Let's do it. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everybody. This is our fifth podcast here in the city of Schenectady for the Homes podcast. I've got Jerry on my left. I got Jason in front of me. We just want to touch about what things have to happen in preparation for winter months, cold weather, snow, ice. Hopefully not too many power outages. Had an hour and a half one this morning, and not bad for clear skies and no snow.
Did you survive?
Yeah, I survived. Yeah, the one light went out. It was nice. But yeah, so I want to thank everyone for making it out today, and I want to get right into. I heard something the other day which got me pretty excited. Jerry's bringing some experience to podcasting. We did talk about it just before the podcast, so hopefully, if anyone's out there and wants a little pre-content, but Jerry, can you give me like a 20-second rundown on how you've done this already?
Repetition. I started when I was like 5 years ago, and just was somebody who was interested in podcasting and was able to just make something happen.
So we didn't talk about this before. Yeah. What did you say, hey, I want to do a podcast, or someone grab you and say, I want you on my podcast? No,
actually, it was a group of 4 guys, including my brother.
Oh, man, he's in everything.
Yeah, I can't keep him away from me. But it was 4 college guys who sat around the table like this, and we were just talking about, whatever it was at that time. So
beautiful.
I actually want to touch on Jason. I know 2 or 3 weeks ago, you guys had a conversation, and it was 2 property managers.
Right. The weeks blend together.
Maybe, yeah, all the weeks.
I'm thinking it might have been 4 weeks.
Maybe it was 4 years ago. Who knows now? But 2 property managers. I know I did some research on you prior to this episode, and I realized that you were doing like technician car work.
Yeah.
Prior to getting into the business. Talk about that.
Yeah, bachelor's degree in automotive technology and management, and I just got out of college at the absolute worst time. I think you talked about it in your career, but I got out at 2009 with an automotive degree, which was like, you might as well burn that thing at that time.
Seriously?
Yeah. Well, in where I lived in Southern Connecticut at the time, and like half the dealerships in the area went out of business. So
wow.
Yeah, it was bad. So that economic downturn really hit the automotive industry. So I ended up just getting into sales, and then I was working with that tool manufacturer for 13 years.
I saw that Snap-on.
Yep, Snap-on Tools. Yep.
Snap-on Tools. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that transition. I know sometimes when we go through things like that, we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We either get a real estate license, right, or or you do something else. But like, how did you transition to then sales at that time?
Yeah, so the good thing about a trade, and I'm one of those people that loves trades, I left that automotive, I left with my degree, but I also left with, I could just go roll my toolbox into a shop and be a mechanic, and that's what I did. So I was a mechanic after college, and then an opportunity came up with Snap-on to move to Vermont and sell for them, and definitely out of my wheelhouse, but it was the best opportunity I'd seen in 2 years, so I took it.
That's smart.
But it would be in your wheelhouse because you can speak to the tools because you've used those tools. So as a carpenter with carpentry experience and housing experience, I love talking to people who are like, well, this is a full gut rehab. I'm like, let's get into the terms. You could talk about, and I'm sure you did multiple times, how your past life translates into, oh, this guy isn't just someone showing up that picked up the paper this morning and said,
correct.
Oh, I got some metric tools to go along with your English Imperial inch standard tool set.
It was a large advantage. Yeah,
huge.
It was knowing the tools and knowing like what that mechanic I was walking into is going to need was big. Yeah.
I think we can always leverage our past experiences, no matter what it is, for future growth. No matter what it is, right? Mm-hmm. We've all gotten some experiences in our lives that we're happy with and not happy with. When I've had old Honda Preludes forever. When a car with bad brakes goes by, I'm like, brakes.
Yeah.
I know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I smell the sweet smell of steaming antifreeze, my heart sinks and my gut feels bad because there's never a cheap antifreeze fix.
I'll tell you a funny one. I was in college, and I was at a friend of mine's party back home, and she pulled in the driveway, and I was like, "Did you get new brakes?" And she was like, only you would ask. He was like, yes, I did yesterday.
Wow.
But I could smell
That's funny.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. You go around and then you'd be like, the right one's sticking.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's awesome, though. I mean, nowadays, we talked about this. Like, trades are not being valued as they were back in the day. And you look like you're my age, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I'm 30. I'm 36. Yeah, 36.
Okay.
I usually ask my wife.
But no, having things to go back, like fall back on, like, trades is very important, especially in this day and age where technology is taking over everything, as you know.
Yeah, and you talk about how skills play into different areas. I'm running a organization that now has a very similar operation to service writing for automotive. Issues come in, you dispatch them, and then you have to properly notate what you did and explain that to the customer so they know what they're paying for.
Yep.
And then you get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So you do all those things. Now I'm doing that very similarly with property management. Issue comes in, figure it out, dispatch it, let the owner know what we're paying for, and keep good books on that. And
Exactly.
It's that's something people don't get right in this business. But I was talking to a business coach, and they were like, "Well, that makes sense. Why you're successful at that is because you were doing it for automotive."
Mm-hmm.
So,
and there's a customer service type of relationship there that you may understand on a better term because you were dealing face to face with car work and things like that.
Absolutely. So regardless of what you're doing, like you're saying, you have everyone has a competitive advantage in certain things.
Yeah.
And you can parlay that into different careers.
The one thing I want to talk about that came up, which super interests me, and I love that you said it, business coach. We all have people that we know that are very successful in their careers, and it's okay to say, hey, look, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. You have great knowledge in different places. What can we do together that's going to help both of us grow, right? Or as a business coach, hey, would you consider coaching me and letting me be your small little Padawan? I'll be your Luke to your Yoda, and you sit on my back and tell me this and that and yes or no, and help me grow. And I have a 4-year business degree, and I'm if someone came in here and said, hey Dave, I want to make you double your transaction count and double your dollars in your pocket by the end of the year, and they've done that themselves, I'd be like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a cost all of a sudden, it's an investment, right? So I love talking to other professionals that go outside of their saying, hey, I'm a professional and I want to grow further and I want to do better and I want to be more of everything in the right positive link. So that's awesome. I want to talk to you about that another time too.
For sure.
And that's what Jason did with his company, Real Property Management.
Yeah, so it's a franchise. So the business coach right now is kind of not forced, but like they give you it.
It's part of the package.
Also, that's not something I see. That's not going to be my only business coach. At some point, I'm going to grow to a point where I'm going to want a different business coach for different situations. So that's not something I agree with you. That's a big thing to do if you own a business.
To me, it also talks to the personality of the person you're talking to, saying, hey, look, I realize I'm not perfect and I have growth potential and I need some outside help, even if it's just encouragement. It's an accountability partner maybe. But no matter what, when there's someone outside help and you're willing to listen, that shows me there's a lot of potential growth.
There's value there. Yeah, exactly.
So cool. But I do want to get into the cold weather today.
Yeah.
So we have you here, Jason. I want to ask you a couple questions. We have a couple quick ideas written down, but when is the right time to start lining up your plow guy? Is it 6 days after the first snow, or?
It is June, man. It's like when you start thinking about it, probably 2 months before then, at least. It's difficult because I took on a couple properties recently that don't have snow removal, and I'm doing it.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So the buck stops here in a lot of things. I bet we're going to discover that throughout conversations here today. That, hey, did you put a plow on your own personal vehicle, or did you get a personal vehicle that'll handle a plow for that reason?
There's a truck sitting outside with RPM on the side of it that has a plow mount on it for sure.
I want to say it's probably also in the summer had weed whackers and lawnmowers in it.
Absolutely.
Right? Because sometimes people, things come up or someone gets sick or hurt and say, hey, I don't have the bandwidth today to do this. And
Yeah.
Lawns gotta get mowed.
Yeah.
Right. So
Exactly.
I've done it.
I've done it. There's your guy.
I don't have a good lawnmower, but I'm out there pushing it.
Yeah.
I believe it. Cool. So okay. So I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, tips for property owners. Before the winter comes, what do you advise them to do to get their home ready for the winter?
Yeah. So in general, if you have the big thing's a spigot. If you have a spigot, shut it off in the house if possible. Take the hose off it. People don't realize there's water in that hose, and that'll back up and freeze into the fixture. And regardless of if you had the water on or off, it will freeze up that fixture and break it. So that's a big one. I'd say anything you were doing to deal with the heat in the summer, like air conditioners, fans, you got to get all that taken care of. Take those air conditioners out, take those fans out of the windows, all that stuff. If you're in an older property, possibly cellophane those windows. It depends on the property, but this area, we have a lot of very old buildings, and that heat might be functioning perfectly, but the windows aren't. So you might want to cellophane those windows, stuff like that. And that's stuff typically the cellophaning windows. I'll talk to tenants about that because it comes up because there's just older. Like some of these buildings, if you go to replace those windows, you're in them for thousands and thousands of dollars because you can't change the architecture, you can't change anything about it. So, really, it's not economical to replace them. So you kind of have to deal with that kind of stuff in a lot of these older buildings.
Okay. Well, tenants always keep their ACs in the windows.
Yeah,
you probably get that a lot.
Yeah.
Winter, summer, spring, I see it the whole way. But I guess sometimes they don't understand the energy that's lost there.
Right. Yeah, and then they're
by having that in there.
Yeah, it's tough for people to kind of visualize that, but really, it's as a property manager, that's my job to make sure they're pulling those out, making sure they're dealing with that. Yeah.
So what do you put on the tenants, and what do you do for yourself? Because let's say I was a tenant in one of your buildings, and I was in a building with old windows. Let's pick something not necessarily not new, but like something beautiful, like historically. Down in, what's the word I'm thinking of? Down here by the waterfront. Stockade.
Stockade.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I was down the Stockade. I'm in this beautiful old home, but let's say I have no experience, cellophaning windows. They make great kits for that, by the way, cheap and easy. But let's say I have no experience with that, right? Would that be something that you'd say, hey, watch a YouTube video on or read the packaging, or could someone make the time to come out and do that, or?
I have no problem walking people through that if they really need it. Yeah, and some people do. Some need that guidance, and I'll walk them through it once to.
Now, I want to stay with this very old house and historic thing. Not all heat systems evenly distribute heat.
No.
I'm from an old farmhouse, right? I grew up in an old farmhouse, other side of Oneonta, and there were spots in the house that were cold. Regardless of how new or old the windows were, they got replaced when my dad did it when I was younger, but there were still cold spots in the house. It was 2,600 square foot. It was built before insulation was a thing, and we kept the water on in a sink or two. And we're in Schenectady. There's a lot of investors out here. If anyone has just bought a house that has water in it, and your heat's set at 55 near the thermostat, it might be 25 or 30 in another room. It could happen, right?
Yeah.
And I would tell people that if in doubt and you want to keep your heat at low and you can't guarantee it, I would turn the water on a bathroom or something to make sure, because flowing water rarely freezes unless it's super cold.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. That was kind of a meandering way to get there. Very good. But yeah, I mean that's the experience I grew up with. You keep the sink on, and we used to keep a hose outside running, and we called it the ice sculpture because that hose would have a trickle and it would build this big elaborate chunk of ice.
Pretty cool.
It would last until middle May.
That's neat.
Well, it was neat, but it was practical.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ideally you don't want the tenants to be dealing with stuff like that, but that's the reality of these older buildings is you can't take care of everything because they weren't engineered that way. They weren't engineered to hold water warm enough so it doesn't freeze. They might have been built before heat. So
they were. I've gone into buildings recently where I've seen more coal on the floor.
Yeah.
Before oil, before natural gas. Obviously, we had coal furnaces.
Yeah.
It just happens. You see a little coal in the corner, like I can place the age of this house now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Have you what stories have you come across? Not horror stories, but stories in regards to like, oh God, they should have hired a property manager.
Yeah, so I'd say I've gotten a lot of self-manage. I got a couple self-managers recently that got into it as new investors and thought they could manage from a distance, which is possible, but the issues were just piling up, so I took it on, and it's like tenant complaint, tenant complaint, tenant complaint. So I wouldn't say I've had any real horror stories. It can all be worked through, but it's a lot. I've gotten a lot of that stuff recently.
You haven't walked into a basement, it's flooded, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on here?
No, nothing like that. I mean, I had
the roof's caving in, or
I had a couple. I had one I didn't take on that had the back of the one window was leaking in the back of the house, and if you went in the second story and stepped near that window, the floor kind of sunk.
That's scary.
So, in that situation, I didn't take that property on. I wrote her up like a thing. This is everything I would fix. Here you go.
Yep.
Have a nice day.
And that can always expand once you open a wall,
right?
Because you're just making guesses. Open that wall and you see, wood destroying insects, and it could be everything.
Those floor joists were no longer attached to whatever they were attached to before.
Yep,
they were just floating. So
absolutely. You'd be amazed how often I see that in some of these cheaper properties. It just happens, 130 years standing in the middle of a field, hoping that your roof and your window and your paints last. It's a big ask, So
a lot of people actually ask that question: should I purchase a 100-year-old building, or should I go with something a lot newer? Sometimes the older ones are built really long, they last really long. But is that something that you come across?
Yeah. So what I would say to that is get an inspector, get a good inspector, get a very good inspector to look at that place. Because I've had a couple that were old that were fine, right? And I've had other ones where I've dug into maintenance issues, right? And I start to see that this has been addressed before, but it was addressed poorly. And, like a toilet leaking. Now, because they didn't really address that, we're replacing subfloor.
They address it with caulk, brother.
Yeah.
So they just caulk the problems to make it not visible.
Yeah, that's another thing. Never caulk the base of a toilet. Like, if you're seeing water under there's a problem. Like,
that's your sign.
Yeah, either that. Exactly. That's your canary in the coal mine, right?
That's like taking this paper and putting over your check engine warning light. I can't see it. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
No,
that's an issue.
Yeah.
So you had to replace the whole subfloor, you said?
Yeah, we're working through it right now. It was probably a decade of just poorly fixed. Get it by.
And if it was addressed as soon as it came up, it would have, you wouldn't have be doing the floor like.
So like I pulled the toilet up, and they make these repair flanges, right? And they work. You can use them. But by the time I got to it, there was no chance of that thing being sunk into the floor. There was no floor around the flange anymore. So they needed new
everything.
Yeah, everything around that toilet's going to be new.
My first house in Troy was north of Hoosick Street on 9th Street, and the had a flat roof drain in the back. It was the original house, had a peak roof, and then had a flat roof drain, and they used to run inside the house because it used to think that there wasn't enough water in the sewer lines to push the poops down, right? And it had leaves in it. There wasn't a leaf blocker. The leaves went down into the house trap, backed up over 20 years of no real good maintenance. And I say good because it comes to that. And the vertical stack broke, filled with water, cracked, and it was 10 feet from the kitchen. And there you could have dropped a Volkswagen bus from not the roof, but the second floor into the basement, hit nothing. There was nothing there. There was 7 or 8 layers of flooring in the kitchen. You go 10 feet from the broken pipe, and every time it got soft, they threw another thing on. And it was fine. To take it out, I was using a circular saw, and it got to the corner where I couldn't remove like the last 18 inches because the circular saw wouldn't fit in the corner. It took me 3 hours to remove that last bit because it was just a block of nails and wood. So you go in places and you step up into a bathroom like 3 inches. You're like, my God,
what's going on?
How many layers of bubble gum and duct tape are here trying to hide real things? I see the same thing when people put down new floors and they don't take up the trim. You're like, there's something bad with this floor, and they're just layering stuff on there. You know, trying to hide it with a cheap piece of plywood or something.
And you know, that's where a good inspector with like that bathroom situation. That's where a good inspector will be like, hey, you know, this, because there are legitimate reasons to do that. Because when they used to build bathrooms, they'd put like 5 inches of concrete down or whatever to tile over. So like, you want to take that out? Probably not. You might want to, depending on what you're doing, but you might want to just leave that thing in there because the whole house is engineered around that thing.
Yep. So, do you ever see those old concrete sinks in the basements that have like a pick eye?
Yeah.
I think they're dropped in the basement before the house on the pick eye because those things are monstrously heavy. If you ever get an old, when you go in the basement, you're gonna be like, oh, that's a concrete double basin sink on little spindly metal legs, and you can't pick it up. But it's got 2 pick eyes, you know, in order to like crane it out. Those things are monstrous. But whoever made those and sold those, they sold them to every person. I want to talk. So we talked about some older houses. I have an investor that likes single family homes. He has a couple 2 families, but we have looked at a single family just this last week on Genesee Street in Bellevue neighborhood, Schenectady, and he likes those because he puts the onus of he's the investor, and he puts the onus of property maintenance on the individual on a single family. I would have to imagine that in your portfolio you have some single family homes too. Do you push like lawn care and snow care onto that, or do you just take care of it? And how does that work as a property manager? Do you put anything on tenants ever?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So with single family properties, that's typically the norm. Is like you're in there, you're the only family in there. You're taking care of the snow removal, you're taking care of the yard. That's not uncommon at all. And actually, I have 2 or 3 right now that are like that. And it's typically it's okay. I mean, every once in a while you run into someone that hadn't, you know, the yard disappears out back and it's dirt, or all the grass is gone. But really, it's most people take care of it.
So what happens then if like you're driving by? I'm sure you check up on the properties, you know, every other day, or 24 or 36 hours after a snowstorm, because you got to check on your plow guys, your salters, or whatever, depending on the level you're offering. If they haven't cleaned it, do you give them a call? Do you then give the tenant a call? Say, hey, you know that this is part of you. We got to clean it within 24 hours. We're past that mark. I don't want to get a ticket. Do you give them a call, or you just clear it and then you bill them for the extra difference? Or
it kind of depends. So if it was like, if we're talking like downtown Schenectady or Albany, where the expectation that it gets cleared out, yeah, we're gonna definitely do that. We're gonna notify them first, but really, if I'm there like 36 hours or 2 days later, I'm just gonna clear it up.
Yep.
But I have a lot of rural properties though, and that's more like, hey man, if you don't want to clear your driveway, you don't have to clear your driveway. I don't know what to tell you. Like, whatever you're renting this place. You want to be sliding into this driveway every time.
Yeah, it makes a difference if something's being enforced. Like if you have a sidewalk, you have to clear it.
Yeah.
Right. But it's funny because I'm the last house on my block that I don't have a sidewalk, so I don't have to clear it, but everyone else does. But I think having the ability to get a fine or get scolded by the city puts teeth to it. I mean, that puts the teeth behind it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Hey, be a good guy. Don't speed. Just account for yourself. Well, if there wasn't someone giving tickets, we'd all slowly go from 60 to 65 to 70, and then we're
maybe
on the
100.
autobahn. Eventually, give it time.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, I want to get into that.
That's a great question. I mean, how do you handle unexpected situations when it comes to property management?
Yeah. So typically, how I handle it is the first time we just assume ignorance. They didn't know. But if it becomes an issue over and again, because we have this issue in Albany a lot with garbage, because it's when you put it out matters, and they don't want it out the day before because they'll fine you. So some people push the envelope on that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh man, I didn't know that. And a lot of people don't know, like Albany will fine you if you put it out a day early. Like,
They do.
like if you leave for vacation and you need to put it out a day early, don't do that. They'll fine you.
Yeah.
So
they're on it.
But, or would it be better to put it a day early and have a fine than come back 2 weeks later than having
yeah, I mean,
That's a balancing act. Do I want 300 pounds of sludge or I want a $50 fine? Yeah, no, I like that. That was a great follow-up, Jerry.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, also, like, what is the criteria for you guys screening tenants? What do you look for? Do you guys you place tenants in homes?
Absolutely.
So how do you guys go about that?
So I always forget one of these. So we do credit, criminal. We check their landlord references. We check that they make 3 times the income. Their income is 3 times the cost of the property, the rent. And then credit, criminal. I do this every time. I talk about this probably 10 times a week, and I forget one of them every time. So we verify their income. I talked about. Man, I don't know.
You said landlord references.
Landlord references. Yeah.
I think to me that goes a long ways because I try not to. But occasionally I will help a previous client who has purchased a property from me put someone in a unit. I really don't want to do that. This is not a sales piece, guys. But I have them pay for their background and through Zillow. So one, beware if you see any pictures and says call owner directly and $75 for application. That is a scam. Because there's application fee limits. I just use whatever Zillow does, whatever their number is, and you can apply to multiple. But I try to get my owners to look beyond a bad credit score because we all make mistakes. So if you can look and say, hey, I'm 23, I just got a good job. When I was in college, I was irresponsible. But here is a great letter. Here, I'm happy to give it for my landlord currently. I'm happy to give you that letter. I'm happy to give you a tour of my apartment. Here's a good letter from my boss. Help me overcome the mistakes I made 2 or 3 years ago as a kid in college. To me, that's huge.
Yeah.
Right. So what kind of bearing does good current behavior have on maybe a lower credit score or something a little shadier in the past?
Yeah. So credit will auto fail. I use a spreadsheet, and it assigns values to everything, and it will auto fail for a certain. I don't actually know what the threshold is. We say 600 on our application, but I've had people approve below 600 if they make a lot more than, if their multiples are good, right?
Okay.
If they're making 5 times the rent. The issue comes down to fair housing with what I do, because I have to kind of treat everybody the same. So that's why I use that spreadsheet. And if that's it, if the spreadsheet says no, we say no, because we can't. Fair housing, we just can't mess. We have to have a system. We have to stick
treat
to it.
everyone equally.
Yeah,
that's your. I mean, that's. I'm not gonna say an out, but if you can say that everyone goes in the spreadsheet and these are the criteria, I'm not making the decision.
Right.
Everyone go through the same process. You're not playing favoritism.
Exactly.
And having good documentation is a great way to work with that.
It's like almost getting renting nowadays is like applying for a job.
Yeah, and
it's so
ultimately,
strict.
like I wouldn't want to if the limiter was off, right? If I didn't have fair housing on my back, I would do it differently for sure. I would do it differently, but ultimately, like I have to stick to that system because as soon as I vary from it, and if I get called to the carpet by fair housing, why did you vary off of your standard practice for this person?
So how do you stay on top of like fair housing laws that keep every year?
That's a positive of having a franchise is they kind of keep up on it. I do a lot of real estate meetups, which I talked about CREA last time. There's a guy that's in like legislative action for New York State. That's super helpful. I just stay up on a lot of it. And yeah, our real property management stays up on it too. And also the amount of franchises is good because like someone will get picked off for one small thing. It's like, oh man, we didn't know like that was an issue. And then, it kind of goes around and everyone says, hey, I just got in trouble for this. And like half of them are doing it. It's like, oh man, maybe we shouldn't be doing that anymore. So
I didn't think of it like that. I mean, that's pretty nifty. It's that because you have the multiple legs in different places, you get the ripple effect of, hey, this happened. I mean, that's actually really cool. I never thought of that as a
me neither.
The hidden or extra bonus from having multiple legs out there in the world.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. We were doing eviction protection. So what we were doing was offering a service where as part of one of my packages, we would cover a certain amount of an eviction if it happened. That was seen as insurance by another state. So And it was actually like a valid argument.
Yeah.
So we don't. That's off my website. I just don't. I started with that on my website and never really activated it. But yeah, we don't offer that for that reason.
How is it seen as insurance? I'm still puzzled by that.
When you drive my new car, if for any reason any part fails, I'll give you the first $500 off of, hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to put a tenant in your building, and if it doesn't work out, I'll cover the first $500 of your $1,200 eviction or whatever it is.
And there's ways to do it with like actual insurance, which I might entertain again. But for now, yeah, I'm not getting involved in that at all. So
I feel like that would be an insurance that you would buy and say, hey, look, there's a percentage of tenants that will always default. That it's like an umbrella thing.
yeah, that's exactly how it would operate. Yeah, and then I would have it as one of my packages as I'd add on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Wow, you never think about this stuff when you're self-managing.
So this is why I like getting into these conversations, because we can get to these really
Nitty-gritty
weird, but if we weren't talking about these other things, we'd be like, hey, I've got 9 questions I want to ask you.
Exactly.
What types of chores tasks are assigned to your tenants? What are you doing? I mean, yeah, it's a great outline, but this is where we get nitty-gritty, and this is hopefully something that,
Of value, yeah.
One thing that I want to ask, do you do T12s?
So not familiar with it.
Okay, so I was asked this a couple times. It's like a rolling income statement for the last 12 months. So there's a lot of investors out there that have no idea how to file taxes on, now they're not just a W-2 employee. If I worked less than a 100K job, one job, nothing was claimed. I show up 9 to 5. I go home. I don't think about work. I don't drive a company vehicle. I can take a snapshot of my W-2. I'm done. 4 minutes. All set. But once you get creative and you start buying investment properties, okay, hey, what can I claim on my taxes? Are your services tax deductible? Show me what I put into the house, show me how much I got out. That's got to be a huge lend on larger properties. They say, hey, look, if you want $1 million, a two-family house, three families, on a 19-unit building that may have a bar in the basement, I want to see business operating, expenses and income on the bar. So I want to know how profitable that bar is. And then that bar is part of the building. I want to know how often you have rentals or evictions. So show me, as detailed as possible over the last 12 months. $19,000 in rent, $2,000 in expenses, $1,100 in unexpected, $1,400 worth of legal whatever. And it shows the last 12. And I've been asked that a couple times. And you go to someone that, a for sale by owner, and be like, what do you mean you want to show the house? And then you go to someone that's listed and be like, I don't have any of that information. You say, okay, well, you got a 4-unit. What do you think the rents are for? Then you do a pro forma, so it slowly gets more advanced that, the more you take your investment seriously. You start working with an agent. They're like, hey, I want to do my due diligence. On behalf of a client that just came up with this idea, hey, I want to buy a multifamily, and they may not have any idea what due diligence means. That's our inspectors, as you brought up. That'd be, finding out which tenants are delinquent and which ones are on time, what type of leases, who is paying for lawn care. But the T12 that I've been asked a couple times were on these multi-million, not $1 million, many unit buildings. There was a 19 down in Albany, and I couldn't get a T12 on it. So I could not answer my client's questions. So I wish they had been professionally managed. Not just a Joe Schmo that inherited from mom and dad, but professionally managed. So I say, hey, I need this so I can help sell the property. Right. So
it's a good point.
But
another reason to speak to Jason.
Ultimately, I can run that report. I just wasn't sure what that meant. But
So it's a
just to clarify.
You and I both.
It's a rolling total for the last 12 months. But even if the vernacular is wrong, or if I'm saying it wrong or whatever,
it sounds cool. It's T12.
But it's cool as can be that, if it's professionally managed and you have records, which you have your 4-year in a business degree of automotive, you were familiar with the individual. Hey, this is the task. This is what it looks like in the month. This is over the last 3 years. This house has paid you, above all your things. This house has profited you $36,000 in 3 years. So, that individual performance is huge.
Absolutely.
And it also helps agents like Jerry and I sell property. So if you are about to sell property in a year or two and you've got 10 buildings, I would put them under management the last couple of years. So that way, anything that needs to be taken care of gets done. You get put higher performing tenants, you get market rent, and you get this accounting that's going to help sell the property.
Exactly.
Right. I think that's as important as, going to paint. I'd put it under that management and get top dollar in a couple years.
How do you, I just had an interesting conversation this morning about market rent because someone had a property up that was under market rent. And it was very obviously under market rent, but the listing agent was saying, hey, we can get this number. And the selling or the buying agent was like, no, we can't get that number. So like, how do you handle that as far as like, there's obviously a gap there, but like where, they obviously weren't managing correctly. So they're keeping under market rent. So they've devalued their property, but how much, like, how do you work that out with a buyer and seller?
You want to go?
No, I guess it depends on the area, the quality of finishes, all that stuff. And I use like Rentometer to see what's going on.
That's a tool I use. One of the tools I use too.
Yeah, so I look at the MLS and see what can you get if you were to go market rent, and what does it look like? What are the finishes in that unit and things like that. So
interesting.
Yeah, that's what I usually do.
So I want to jump right in.
Yeah, do it.
So Rentometer, great. That's based on past results.
Correct. Yeah.
It does not look forward. If every home sale was based on what they sold for, we would be in 3 chicken bones and a piece of glass for a cave, right? Because the moment you have your first transaction, that's the only history. You can't grow from that. So we'd be at $3,000 for a 1956 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. But that's not where we are, is it? So, when you do a new unit, you say, how high can I push my rent? Right? If I just redid a house on Lang Street, not done yet, but I'm using a real life example, that'll have 4 or a 5th bedroom, depending if I put a door on it, a 5-bed, 2-bath, 2-story unit with forced hot air, with AC, so no window units, because I don't like tenants putting the window units in backwards and run the water in and ruin my house. What's the rent on that? Well, it's going to have in-unit laundry. It's got granite. It's going to have pre-finished hardwoods. It's a 2-story unit. Everything is brand new, and it's so well insulated. I haven't even bought the insulation yet. That's how new insulation is. It's still sitting at Lowe's. I'm going to ask for $2,200. People are going to be like, you can't get that.
Yeah.
How many other brand new renovations are? And I'm not chasing the bottom dollar, but what if I can't get 20? I'm going to ask for 2,200, and I've added all that in there. But let's say Rentometer says 1,400. They're taking an average of what's already been done.
Yeah.
And mine will be above average, so I'm going to set my own price anyways. And it's I'm over budget. We're going to be 30,000 more than I expected. Instead of 225, and I'm going to be like 250 into this renovation and purchase. I can't afford to go 1,100 on a 5-bedroom.
No.
So at some point we take Rentometer or we take previous sales in a CMA and say this is nicer or bigger, or I'm seeing where the market's going currently. And that's where the professionals in the field like you, Jerry, and myself would say, hey, look, I just rented out, or Jason here, I just rented out 2 2-bedrooms, and this is bigger and nicer and washer and dryer. I'm going to go from 12 to 1,600 and try it. What if you get a no the first day? What if you get a no the second day?
Yeah, you see what.
But on Wednesday you get a yes.
Yeah.
You just did great for your owner. You just did great for the owner, either selling it or renting it.
Yeah.
But do you think now who are you attracting when you market that?
Well, it's illegal to discriminate against where legally procured funds are. Just so you know, and if anyone's saying, "Hey, we don't take Section 8 or RSS or or anything like that," that's a no-no. I believe if I were to ask Jason right now, families stay in property longer than a college kid going to rent out, but I can't discriminate against that, which is why they'd go into a spreadsheet.
Correct.
Which, if I can't get a tenant in there in the first week, I'm going to probably call Jason up, or I'll probably call Jason up here because I've talked to him more than any other property manager in a long time.
That's true. Buddy, that's the first property manager I've ever seen in person.
Get this done for me.
Yeah.
And I'd rather you keep it vacant for 2 weeks than fill it tomorrow at $300 too low.
Now, do you think you're competing against the luxury apartments?
No competition. There are no luxury apartments.
Not in that area. Yeah. But I'm just saying in general, I know there's a lot that's sprung up in Albany. And now the question begs to differ is, if someone, has a high-paying job and wants to be in a, recently renovated place, they're gonna more or less lean towards a luxury apartment that has all the amenities, plus the gym, plus the parking, plus all the stuff. That's now, if you've seen some of these like Slip 12, I mean, they're doing it all in there.
I want to bring up how great of a question that is, because we're going to get questions like that all the time. Why don't you just buy a house at $2,200 bucks? You can buy a house.
Yeah.
Great. What if you didn't have the $10,000 down payment? What if you were going to be here 3 years or 2 years? By the time you do a closing cost, you pay $10,000 on closing.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you sold it for the same amount, there's transactional costs. You'll lose money buying a house for 3 years, unless, assuming no equity gains or non-historically accurate equity gains. All things being normal, it could be cheaper to rent, even at a higher price, than it is to buy and have that transaction cost on your way out. What if the house you're looking for a 5-bedroom house and they're all way too expensive or not nice?
Mm-hmm.
This would be a 5-bed, 2-bath house, or 4 with an extra bonus room bigger than most bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Or what if there's traveling nurses? There's a traveling nurse program that prepays a full quarter of a year. So they say, hey, we're going to put it in for 13 weeks. They'll be out at 12 weeks and 6 days, but you got to furnish it. But that's paid in advance. There's a ton of opportunity out there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who'd rent it.
That's the reason. That was an open-ended question, but I'm just saying, like, if you're asking for way above market value,
so
you may run into that question where someone says, hey, I may want to buy something, or
I need a reliable 2-door car. A car. I prefer 2 doors. Kind of fun to get from point A to point B. What kind of car are you going to sell me?
2-door?
Yeah, sure. Does it look like a Honda Civic or a Ferrari?
Corvette, dude.
Anything in between, though,
yeah, exactly.
Right? But anything, but anything in between. Like you say, well, Hondas are a good, reliable car, and I need a good, reliable car. Well, there's a Civic. Well, there's an Accord.
Mm-hmm.
There's I don't think they do the Fit anymore, but there's and then you say, okay, well, a Civic. Well, what trim package? Oh, holy cow! I'm looking for a 4-bed apartment. I want a second bath, not a half bath, but a full second bath. And okay, well, what if I don't have to put my laundry in the car and take it to the shop and take it down and wash it and fold it and have all my undergarments in full view of everyone, and then I got to pay quarters for that if I don't have a car, if I'm an international student. There's a lot of benefits that you can add in. And one of the things I tell people who are renovating an apartment is put your washer and dryer upstairs. Put it in unit. Don't quarter meter. And then get $100 a month because I'm going to spend $50 a month twice a month. I'm going to have to possibly get an Uber. I'm going to have to definitely carry my stuff in and out of the car, wait in line, fold it there, or I can do one load at a time in my kitchen or in the large bathroom or whatever, and just charge me $100 a month, the amount I'd pay over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's $1,200 a year. A stackable set's $950. In less than a year, it pays for itself. It lasts 10 years. It's made you $9,000 profit.
Yeah.
That's a good vending machine. You never have to refill.
It's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
So you can put these things in there that just, it's a passive wealth builder. Hey, if you don't want the washer and dryer in there, cool. There's other apartments that don't have it. Mine does.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jason? If he's asking for $2,200,
so
what he?
My thing with some of these higher bedroom count units is it gets very difficult to find a comp for it, and I'm sure you found this where there's not much out there that's competitive to what you have. So when you pull a rentometer report, it's going to be finding this house in Scotia, this house.
It's going to comp single family homes somewhere. Yeah.
Yep. So it's a different animal, and then not everybody wants to be in a community, which is a lot of these bigger, nice, like you were talking about, higher end stuff. It's like, man, I don't really want to be in a community, but I don't want a house. I don't want to buy a house. I don't want to rent in the middle of nowhere. So here I am. And it's weird how different people in different situations gravitate towards certain. It's like you do 2 showings and one person's in this one situation. You're like, oh, that's interesting. That works for them. And then there's other person's in this other completely different situation. You're like, oh, it works for them too.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I agree. It's going to be a crazy price tag, but at the end of the day, you don't dump $250,000 into a house to break even. And all I need is a couple people who are interested, and one to pick. Is where it comes out.
I also don't think you're like off the realm with pricing. It's with stuff like that, you got to test it. You got to see where you're at. And when I do these types of properties, I give a much wider range, and I just say, look, this is our rental range. We're going to start here. If we can't get to, if we're not getting leads in 2 weeks, that's a problem, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
but you got to test the water. If you're fishing, you don't throw one type of fish out there, or and say boom, or one type of lure. Say I didn't catch any fish with this lure. There's no fish in here. Okay, let's change the tag. Let's do 6 months. Let's furnish it. Let's go. We're all open to feedback.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So listening to David's situation, ideally, what do you think 2 bedrooms, 1 bath are going for in that part of town?
2 bedroom, 1 bath in that part?
It was 2 bedrooms, right?
Dude, it's a 5. It's a 4 or 5 bed 2 bath.
See, this is where I would.
It's hard to comp.
It's hard to comp, and I'd sit down for a while trying to figure out what if there's anything that's been on the market recently that's similar. Like Rentometer is a great way. I'll go through the bottom of that report and just click. This isn't the same. Click. This isn't the same.
Okay.
This isn't the same. And I'll do that on the bigger properties because it's. The smaller properties, it's easy. It's like 2 bedroom. A lot of rentals are 1 or 2 bedrooms. But you get into the bigger count, it gets a little weird trying to find a comp for it.
But I can get to that 5 bedroom without losing formal dining and without losing a living room. I can get to that naturally without like closing off and hanging a curtain. Oh, this is my bedroom because there's a curtain here.
Yeah, and then you might pull up a comp and it looks the same on the face, but it's literally like a 5 bedrooms and a hallway. And maybe like a kitchenette. So it's kind of it gets a little. You get into the weeds doing comps and stuff like that.
Trust me.
But getting in the weeds is where the fun is. The weeds are where the exciting conversations go.
We're on your side. We want you to get that.
But that brings up an interesting point. If I can't get the money and I break even, if I don't cash flow and I only break even, let's say it's $1,500 for a 5 bedroom or 4 bedroom, which is way below. Is it still make sense? Well, in 30 years, the tenants pay my mortgage off. And now I'm cash flowing whatever the mortgage rate was. Of course, I'm going to have to repair some things over 30 years, but assuming I'm putting money aside for capital improvements or CapEx, I'm putting enough there that I'm not surprised. In 30 years, I'm still free.
You're still,
So if this were a 401k, you don't need your 401k to pay you a dividend every month. Its job is to grow. So if I had $250,000 into this house that I was hoping to be worth $325, but the tenants pay off the house, I don't cash flow, but now in 30 years it's worth $250, and then you have equity gain anyways. It's worth $500,000 over 30 years. I would have had none of my own money in after I burr it out, and I waited 30 years, but no money turned into $500,000. That's a win.
That's a win.
It's a win.
Good situation.
Now, that's worst case scenario. It's worth $500,000 more than I put into it because I got all my money back out.
Yeah.
So,
real estate's a long-term play.
We put so much pressure on a 2-family to how is this 2-family that I got bargain dollar going to change my life so I can quit all my jobs tomorrow and buy that Ferrari we talked about? Maybe it's a longer-term game than that.
So I get this question a lot about like cash flow, and I usually put it at how many rentals do you see foreclosed on in Saratoga?
Not much.
Never going to happen.
None, right?
No.
But none of them cash flow, right? Almost none of them cash flow.
Yeah, I mean,
almost none of them cash flow. So
they don't come up.
The thing is, it's all equity play. The people are realizing that first couple of years they might not make any money on it, but Saratoga appreciates.
Let's just keep going.
So yeah.
That's a good point.
So let's talk about Gloversville for 2 seconds. I was in Gloversville. Really, really huge potential on the upside. Not today, not tomorrow, but maybe in 10 years. What if the valuation starts to catch up to where Schenectady is? 5 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about the rents or valuation in Schenectady like we are today. It's not the same conversation. 10 years ago in Troy, we wouldn't be having the same conversation we are today. What if going to Gloversville and picking up a couple, 2 families now and putting way too much money in and holding a very nice apartment that costs you twice what it's worth today and not making the rents you think it's worth, but in 10 years you now have 10 properties that are fully renovated and now you have Schenectady valuation up there. You would be the only nice apartments that people would be now fighting over. The tenants have paid 10 years worth of rent, at market there may not be what you're hoping it would be, but now you have, the nicest apartments in town that people are fighting over. Additionally, if you only ever bring the house up to what it'll support, you will always be in a downtrend. Because I guarantee that roofing and flooring and windows, they get worse over time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a kitchen cabinet can only open and close so many times, less if you slam them, right? But, you know, if we only keep bringing it up back to the average is constantly dropping because of age. We're going to be out here putting paint on a house that's still on fire and say, boom, now it's back to the average. So I think like farming, I think this real estate investment plan has got to have some hope for the future. Right? And say, well, if we can make some big changes and whatever, and we see how market trends have gone, you know, down the road, that $85,000 two-family I showed on Saturday, you know, might be worth what it'd be in Schenectady today, which is $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could break even until then, it's not bad.
You're doing good.
And that's 10 years. We're not even talking the 30-year road.
Mm-hmm.
So are you telling us to invest in Gloversville?
After I do. I'm serious. I was in 4 buildings, and 3 of them I was ready to buy yesterday.
I get a lot of calls about Gloversville, and I don't manage out there. I refer out to another company that specializes out there. But, yeah, it's interesting how many calls I get out there.
Especially Amsterdam has changed, or it's changing.
Amsterdam is on the footstep of Schenectady. I don't want to say Schenectady is, you know, the big greatest push, but that's where we're based, and that's what we're talking about, you know, in general.
Mm-hmm.
Amsterdam's happening now. I think if you're in Amsterdam in the next 5 years, you're going to do great. But it'd be like saying you want to buy a Monopoly color that's half already bought. You know, you don't get to own the whole town unless you're the first person to land on Marvin Gardens, right? You know, like, so if you were saying, hey, I want to own, you know, a good chunk of a town, and I really want to double down on long-term investment, then if you don't, one, build your houses back up to the quality you want others to, you're going to keep downward pressure on valuation. But if you own a good chunk and you put your houses then hotels on it, you know, when the rest of the game catches up, you're the king of the board.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you're the king of the hill.
And yes, there are certain places that I can't even find places to renovate, like fixer uppers less than $100K.
Oh yeah.
I mean, shop in Schenectady for multifamily fixer uppers that are less than $100K. They're city owned or they're on fire.
That's what I always say.
No, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple of questions I wanted to shoot off to Jason. I know we have 5 minutes, so I'll shoot these off and you answer as you go. Yeah. They're not SAT questions, so don't worry. What advice would you give to property owners looking to hire a property manager?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I usually say you want to ask how many properties they manage, which right now for me, that's a tough question because I have like 35 doors. But ask them how many they manage, how long they've been in business. So again, tough for me because I have 1 year in. But you want a track record of good management. I would also, if they're established, ask them for references, right? Who have you managed that?
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
That's a good point.
I didn't think of that.
Me neither.
And I mean, a lot of property management comes down to philosophy. How they're gonna, are they looking at it as they're managing your asset, or are they looking at this as just another business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's tough to vet. It's tough to vet, and I think that's decent advice, but I'd probably talk to another property owner that's done it to.
No, that's real. I mean, the references, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
I mean, also, when we were talking about tenant screening and calling back at, you know, their previous landlords, I mean, it looks like you're really based off of communication.
Yeah, we try to. It's funny. The landlord references, I'd say half the time they hit, half the time we don't get a call back. We always try. Because that's valuable information.
That's huge
for vetting a tenant. Yeah. How did they leave that unit? Would you rent to them again? You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have pictures you can show us of that unit?
Yeah.
Are there common mistake property owners make that could be avoided?
Yeah, I would say not buying a property in an area and not understanding the local ordinances. So, like Albany, there's occupancy permits. Schenectady occupancy permits. Make sure you understand what needs to be done to get a tenant in your unit per the code. And then I think that's probably, and avoid properties that have been just kind of I used a farm analogy. The pig that hasn't been fed, but the guy's been taken, or that's a bad, the chicken that, the chicken that hasn't been fed, but they're taking eggs from it, you know? You gotta keep that property up. Make sure they were doing the right stuff. Have somebody look at it that with professional eye that can say, yes, this was maintained well, or no, this was not maintained well.
Oh, perfect. These are some good tips.
You know what I'd be really interested in is what if they could like offer a, hey, go with me on a showing consultation, like even if there was a fee out there, hey, look, you know, I'm looking at 3 properties to a portfolio or create a portfolio. You know, time is valuable, so I don't want to say, you know, give us all your time for free, but whatever. Wouldn't it be cool to take a property manager that you plan on hiring and say, hey, you know, what do you think the timeline is, and what, you know, guide me through what would make this the most money? I mean, you can take contractors through, but contractors say, I'm here to fix stuff. You know, if you're here to fix stuff, they might just find stuff to fix. If you're out there with a property manager to say, well, if you want to get, you know, a higher clientele, we want to change out bathroom and whatever. If you want just a, you know, anyone, we got to change the floors and paint the windows. And, you know, I see that, you know, you've got 2 broken windows. That's not going to pass certain government funded agencies that'll pay the rent for you. So, you know, let's fix those too. It's coming from a different angle. It'd be kind of fun to go out with, you know, someone that you plan on taking over the property to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of. Would you be comfortable doing the work and renovate and then putting under management? Yeah,
interesting idea. I think it would be tough for property managers to, just because of the amount of stuff that's on our plate, to like do that. But I've entertained it with owners that I have under management.
Yeah, if existing customers.
I would rather look at the property before I take it on than have the owner say, hey, I just bought this thing. And you're like, why did you buy this? You know, exactly. Like, man, I don't want to manage this thing. You
know? That's a sign. If the property manager doesn't want to manage it. Did you have a question?
Well, I just had, I mean, I feel like we hit most of the things I wanted. I like that. Did you have anything else? Because I have other stuff I can ask, but.
Yeah, no worries. Can you share any success stories or positive outcomes from your work as a property manager?
Yeah, so I've had a couple. I had my first property I took on was a mess. The guy had double barrel evictions. It was duplex, up, down. Both of them weren't paying. I took it on mid eviction, which in that case, typically I'll tell the property manager, keep doing what you're doing with your lawyer. When it vacates, or if you need help, at the point where someone has to meet the sheriff or whatever, I'll help you out. But like, really, if the eviction's going on, keep doing what you're doing. But I took it on, redid it, and I mentioned it not in the last podcast, but we did some work to it, got it back up the standard, and we got more than market rent for it.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Breaking trends.
You know?
Yeah. But it's exactly what you're saying. Like, you look at the mix of what's around it, and nothing was as nice. Mm-hmm. So it's like, do you price it next to the other one just because it rented for that? No, you don't do that. You go for a little higher and see what you get.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And test the market.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely have to. Last question. What do you think is the most important piece if you had to give like a 2-second elevator pitch to someone? Hey, I'm thinking about buying a property. What's your number one piece of advice?
I'm looking to buy a property.
I'm looking to buy a cash flowing property. I want to use it to start a portfolio. What would you give a 10-second response? What do you think is the most important thing to consider?
Make sure your numbers are right. Make sure spend a lot of time in the spreadsheets and figure out what your buying criteria is and figure out what you want out of that property. Do you want it to cash flow? Do you not want it? Does the cash flow even matter to you? If the cash flow doesn't matter to you, that's an advantage to you, because most people want the cash flow. So I'd say figure out your buying criteria, figure out your numbers, run your numbers, and don't buy something that doesn't meet their criteria.
So do your homework and stick to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. There you
go.
All right, guys, I want to say thank you, Jason. Thank you for your time.
No problem.
Jason, thank you.
We were open for like a half hour. And we got another full-fledged hour of it.
Right through it.
That was awesome.
Yeah, guys, this has been great. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Of course.
And I'm not going to call you back for the next one, but and I would love to see questions. I would love to see some questions from our viewing audience as it grows. I mean, there's got to be a way to contact us.
Of course.
I mean, even if someone messages me on Facebook and said, Dave, or can you ask this next time you have someone up? I did in fact bring papers today. I didn't have any comments to ask, but I would love to get some interactions with the people out there.
Let's do it.
So if you have a question that makes sense, send it in. If we can figure out how to find it and get it in here and ask whoever we talk to or bring it up, personally, we'll handle it. And I'm still looking for a piece of art, guys. I mean, there's got to be someone out there that wants something up here that says, hey, if you want to see a local artist or, meet them in person at the Schenectady Green Market or Farmers Market, let's utilize this space to put someone new on the board.
Yeah, sounds good. Jason, any way we can follow you? How do we get in contact?
rpmcapitalregion.com. I'm not great on social media, so I mean I have an Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, but I am not. That's not my thing. So, that's my website now, rpmcapitalregion.com. There's ways to get a hold of me there.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Cool.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.